I met Daniel on a Thursday. I remember that because it had rained that morning, and my shoes were still damp when I stepped into the bookstore where he worked. I wasn't looking for anything special, just killing time between errands. And there he was, sitting behind the counter, thumbing through a paperback with a half-drunk cup of coffee beside him. He looked up, smiled, and said, "You look like someone who needs something romantic and messy." I laughed, caught off guard. "Do I?" He handed me a book I'd never heard of. "Trust me." And I did. It started small. A conversation here, a book recommendation there, then coffee, then dinner. Then months melted together until I couldn't remember what life felt like before he was in it. Daniel was simple in the best way. Steady, but not boring. The kind of man who notices when your shoulders tense and rubs them without being asked. Who doesn't just ask how your day was, but waits for the answer. He didn't have Jake's reckless smile or Aaron's dangerous edge, and that, I think, is why I fell. By the time we moved in together, I had deleted every old photo from my past relationships. I told myself I was ready. And, for a while, I was. We built a life slowly, matching mugs, grocery lists, arguments about whether the dishes go face up or down in the washer. Nothing explosive, nothing toxic. Just two people learning how to make space for each other. When he proposed, it wasn't a grand gesture. No fireworks, no big crowd. Just him and me, on our couch, on a rainy night, holding hands and watching an old movie. He turned to me and said, "I'd really like to do this forever." I said yes before he even pulled out the ring. The wedding was small, simple, just like us. I wore a second-hand dress and he cried when he saw me walk down the aisle. That alone made everything worth it. For a while I thought, this is it. This is what it means to feel safe. But safety, it turns out, can be deceiving. 6 months after the wedding, my phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m., a number I didn't recognize. I was half asleep, but something in my stomach twisted. I opened the message. It said, "You don't know me, but you should know what your husband's doing when you're not around." Attached was a photo. Blurry. Nighttime. But unmistakably Daniel. And a woman. Her hand on his chest. His face close to hers. I sat up in bed. I stared at the screen until the light blurred my vision. I didn't confront him right away. I told myself it could be fake. Misunderstood. A prank. But my gut wouldn't shut up. Over the next week, I watched him closer. He was still kind. Still present. Still Daniel. But now I noticed the times he took longer to text back. The way he left the room to answer certain calls. The smile that didn't quite reach his eyes when I mentioned plans for our future. Then came the second message. Different number. Check the receipts. Ask him about the client meeting last Thursday. I didn't check the receipts. I checked the hotel records instead. He had booked a room under his name. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat down on the kitchen floor and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. Because betrayal doesn't always come with shouting. Sometimes it walks in quietly, smiling, kissing your forehead, asking what you want for dinner. When I finally asked him, he didn't deny it. He just looked at me, and in the smallest voice said, "I didn't mean for it to happen." And I think that hurt worse than if he had planned it, because it meant he was careless with me, with us. I didn't sleep that night, neither did he. We sat in the same room, not touching, not speaking, just breathing in the end of something we thought would last. And in the morning, I packed a bag. Not because I didn't love him, but because I finally loved myself more. I moved into a short-term rental on the other side of town. It was small, just a studio with thin walls and bad plumbing. but it was mine. And after everything, having something that was just mine felt like a kind of power. I didn't tell many people, not right away. I wasn't ready for the questions or the pity. I wasn't ready to relive it all in someone else's voice. Instead, I focused on surviving. I started going to the gym again, not for revenge, not for transformation, just to feel something steady beneath my feet. I reconnected with my sister, went to brunch with coworkers, let myself laugh even when it felt out of place. For the first time in a long time, I was waking up for myself. And yet, the nights were the hardest. That's when I missed the sound of Daniel brushing his teeth, or the way he always tossed his keys in the same bowl by the door. I missed the routines more than the romance, but I didn't go back. Because no matter how familiar someone is, if they make you doubt your worth, it's not home. 3 weeks passed before he reached out. First a text, "I miss you," then a voicemail. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Then a letter, slipped under the door of the building. "Please just talk to me." I didn't respond, because he didn't fight for our marriage when it mattered. He only wanted to fix what was broken after it had already shattered. One night I walked past the bookstore where we met. It had closed, windows covered with brown paper, shelves empty. I stood there for a while, hand on the glass. The place where it all started was gone, and strangely, that made it easier to keep moving. 2 months later, I joined a writing group, not because I was a writer, but because I needed somewhere to pour the words I hadn't said aloud. That's where I met Noah. He was quiet, observant, the kind of man who didn't try to fill silences but respected them. He didn't flirt, didn't push, just asked thoughtful questions and listened, really listened, when I spoke. I wasn't ready for anything, and he knew that, but he showed up. Week after week, coffee after meetings, walks that lasted longer than planned. One night, as we stood outside the library in the cold, he looked at me and said, "I don't want to be someone who saves you. I just want to be someone who sees you." And I cried, because that was all I ever wanted. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe it's Noah. Maybe it's just me. But I know this. Healing doesn't come from going back. It comes from learning to move forward, even when your legs shake. And love, the real kind, doesn't make you question if you're enough. It reminds you that you always were. Sometimes I wonder how long he waited for me to respond. If he stood outside my old door, hoping to hear my footsteps. If he imagined what I was doing on Sundays, whether I was still drinking black coffee, still watching old movies, still wearing the faded sweatshirt he once said made me look like home. But healing means not needing those answers anymore. I didn't erase him completely. Some things you don't have to hold on to in order to remember, like the way he hummed while cooking, or the time he carried me 3 blocks in the rain because my shoes had broken. I carry the lessons, not the pain. One night, months later, I ran into his mother at the grocery store. Her face lit up when she saw me, then quickly softened into something gentler. She didn't ask how I was. She just said, "He's not the same without you." I smiled, not because I was flattered, but because I didn't feel responsible for that anymore. That night, I wrote another letter, not to him, to myself. It started with, "I'm proud of you," and it ended with, "You made it out." Noah and I didn't rush things. He never made me feel like I had to be healed to be loved. We took our time. He met my sister over brunch one spring morning, and I watched the way he listened to her stories with the same attention he gave me. And I realized something. The safest place I've ever been is not in someone's arms. It's in the space between their words, when you know they're choosing you without needing to say it. Sometimes I still flinch when I hear his name, not out of pain, out of memory, out of the reminder that I once mistook comfort for peace. But now peace doesn't whisper, it stays. It's in the sound of a quiet kitchen, in Sunday mornings spent writing, in laughter that isn't followed by apologies. It's in the version of me who finally learned that letting go isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing I've ever done.